as the connectivity among the all the blocks are to be changed for alteration. Hence, every new transaction or every new addition to the blockchain has to be validated, and then the new blocks will be added to the existing blocks. Hence, the policy is followed like this. It becomes a very, very strong platform for storing the data as well as adding the new data. As all the data which are stored in the blockchain can be auditable but cannot be editable by anyone. Each block has its own unique cryptographic value, that means a hash function. If time permits, we'll see a small demonstration of how the hash value gets changed from one file to the other file. Okay. So let us see the background of this blockchain quickly, then we'll move on to the main concept. In 1990s, the concept was introduced. The distributed computing concept was introduced, and then there are many research are starting over there. In 2009, after 20 years approximately, the person who is known as Satoshi Nakamoto has developed a currency called Bitcoin, and he introduced the concept of blockchain. As the currency is stored in the multiple number of computers in a distributed fashion, nobody can alter the currency. The currency becomes a very unique value. In 2011, he started using that currency as a cryptocurrency, and he deployed on the website. In 2013, the currency was accepted for transfer the digital payments in a digital systems. In 13 to 14, the financial markets and applications are start using the blockchain technology to transfer the cash transaction. So that becomes a contract between two parties. And in the end of 2015, the blockchain are used for smart contracts between two parties across the globe. And in the year 2015 and 16, the blockchain network solutions have been developed in the world, and many MNC companies have started using it for their specific purpose. And from 16 to 20 till today, there are many research on blockchain, and the companies are start using the blockchain technology for their various purpose, especially the storage and contract signing. So let us know, if not blockchain, what was the system is existing? It's very simple that you assume that you are transferring money from your account to somebody's account. Then you have to pay some commission, brokerage charge to the third party. The third party who takes money from your account and transfer the money into the destination account. So the third party is called a suspense account in terms of RPI. The suspense account hold your money for some times and transfer that money into the destination account. So there is a chance of misusing the money, and the central authority, the one who is transferring the money, can take upper hand on your money. He also can refuse to transfer the money instantly and can hold your money for some times. Similarly, the mediator can increase the transaction cost, and also the mediator can tell you that this is the minimum transaction, I would like to do that. So by considering all these factors, they introduce a new concept, is called blockchain, where the third party or the middleman can be removed or can be eliminated. And hence the transfer of money can happen over the receiver at a time, the same moment you transfer the money. And as you know that if there is the middleman or the third party is removed, then what is the authentication or integrity of transaction that is taken care by the blockchain. So the blockchain is taking care of decentralized patient. Hence, the money once you transfer, that can be credited into the receiver account immediately, and hence the reconciliation can happen instantly. Look at the three variation of networks. First one is centralized network that look like an RPA or banking site or banking structure. Second one is decentralized network, but still there are some centralized people among or for n number of banks. The third diagram, distributed network, is the origin of blockchain, where the banks or the nodes are connected one each other. Hence, there is no person is called a centralized person or the superior. Hence, the data is stored almost all the nodes in the network. The validity of the data as well as the authenticity of change in the data becomes high. When we talk about blockchain, there are three main pillars called as decentralization, transparency, and immutability. So decentralization makes the data, either in terms of storage or in decision making, makes the data in decentralized fashion. Hence, everybody in the network should participate in changing or alter the data. As the data is stored as a distributed way, the transparency is so high, anybody can verify or validate the nature of data. As I said already, the blockchain is immutability. As the data is stored in distributed in many nodes, distributedly stored, it is not so easy, almost is impossible to make mute, impossible to create a fake or change. As everybody talks about blockchain, what is the reason behind it of blockchain? It is very secure. As I told you that it is impossible for anyone to tamper, because he has to compromise almost all the nodes in the network, then only he can get the data. So it is impossible for tampering or cracking the data. And worldwide adopted, is already adopted worldwide by some MNC companies and across the globe. There are many standards have been established for adopting this blockchain technology. And automated operations. As we are using blockchain with machine learning and artificial intelligence, there are many features are available to automate the operations. Hence, the workload of the server can be reduced. And blockchain is open source. Hence, anybody can use it as they want and can be customized by the people for their specific purpose. And this is a distributed architecture. Hence, the records are stored in all the nodes of the network. Hence, the compromising of record is highly impossible. Flexible. Flexible. Blockchain is programmable. Hence, and is highly flexible. So, the basic programming concept on this blockchain can be customized based on the needs of the company. And what is the working principle of blockchain? If somebody or some transaction to be added to the existing blocks, then the transaction is requested by the client. The requested transaction is then broadcasted to the B2B network. Then B2B network is reiterate that request for a validation. Then the validation of the transactions happen with the user identity and status. And once it is verified, then the transaction can be submitted for addition into the existing blocks. Before it is adding to the existing block, the new transaction has been created as a block by involving the information about the existing block. Remember that the new transaction is getting the information of the existing blocks, then only can be added to the existing blocks. And hence, once it is added to the existing block, that becomes a part of chain. That's a part of chain of block. So, what is the evolution of blockchain? Blockchain was started for the focus of money transaction like cryptocurrency. In the year it was started by 2009, and then it moves into the second generation as concentrate on the assets for multiple ownership or registers and contracts. And in the third generation, the latest generation, the blockchain is used for smart contracts between two parties. In the domain of insurance, pricing, or contracts, quoting, etc. When we talk about blockchain, let us record it. The blockchain is used in the industries as the financial services taken the major part of usage of blockchain, whereas the industrial products and energy takes the other second and third contribution. So it clearly says that the blockchain plays a major role in financial services. Let us differentiate the blockchain and traditional database. The traditional database, in the traditional database, you can perform any operation like create, read, alter, and delete. But in case of blockchain, only you can insert the operation as a block. The new block will be added based on the rule. The replication can happen in traditional database by using a master slave or multi-master. Master can replicate it. But in case of blockchain, the replication cannot happen for a record, rather can happen as full replication of block on every node. And consensus, it's a distributed transaction, so two-phase commitment is sufficient for traditional database. But in blockchain, majority of the pairs, almost all the nodes in the network should agree for the outcome of new transaction. Invariant, the integrity constraints are there for traditional database, but in blockchain, anybody can validate the transaction across the network. That's the strength of blockchain. Then what's the difference between blockchain and distributed ledger? Blockchain has sequence of blocks, but in distributed ledger, we don't have sequence of blocks, whereas we don't require at all. Blockchain focuses on how data is stored and linked to the existing blocks for the new incoming block. But in case of distributed ledger, it is not necessary to focus in such a way that, but the new incoming can be added to the database straight away. But blockchain is not so easily scalable, but distributed ledger can be scalable easily. As we know that blockchain should have a consensus algorithm for common agreement, but in distributed ledger, we don't need algorithms for common decision. So let us learn the top 10 applications for blockchain technology one by one. Supply chain management. As we know that blockchains increase the complexity in tampering the data, hence the overall efficiency of supply chains get increased. And the blockchain provides an accurate identification of the location of items on the supply chain, hence we can identify the item where it is now. Hence, we could understand or identify the location of items. The loss of items or monitor the quality of products can be done easily. The second application is digital ID. Microsoft found that more than 1 billion people in the world have no digital identity for banking or financial transaction. So Microsoft is working on it to create an ID for each and every person, especially for African countries. So this digital ID would help the people to get the money over a single click. As the blockchain able to provide a unique ID for each and every person can be used for a digital ID. So Microsoft is in the process of using blockchain to create a digital ID for every person by using an authenticator app. The app is not just providing a password, rather the app is going to detect the device ID as well as the person identity by using a separate layer. So that will become an ideal way for transaction like a GPay. Thereafter, we don't have any account. We should have a digital ID for financial transaction that goes into the account directly. Other major contribution of blockchain is healthcare application. As we know that patient is the main person in healthcare application, his data should be stored in a secure and confidential way. Not only secure, but also to be accessed by the patient as well as the doctor on whom he is permitted to access the data. So the patient would be given a number key that is called as patient ID. By using that, he can access his records anywhere in the world. Blockchain can be used to store that healthcare data about the patient in a distributed fashion. Hence, the data stored very confidential but also secure. So this information, the patient diagnosis information or patient some confidential information about the patient can be stored by using a blockchain in healthcare application. And wills and inheritances. As we know that there are many dispute comes when we write a wills in paper, either the wills may disappear or there would be a change in the wills, and accordingly that make a dispute and runs in the case in the court for decades together. But the smart contract or contract concept in blockchain can be used for wills. Hence, that makes very clear and unaltered statements for the successor. So this blockchain will help to write the wills with very clear and also end of life concerns to be raised. Other application of food safety is that blockchain can be used to trace the food items from the origin to your plate. So as that blockchain is immutable in nature, the transport of food from the origin to the supermarket can be traced easily. No forgery or mutable data can be created. If the food becomes illness or foodborne illness or appeared, then we can easily understand the contaminated or source of food. Hence, we can take necessary action to control the illness of the food. The next important application is digital voting. As we know that digital voting becomes very complex in nature because anybody can vote for digital. Anybody can poll their vote in digital if they know the concept and IDs. So blockchain can be used for digital voting as the blockchain is immutable in nature. No forgery vote or no fraud vote can be created. As like this other application, blockchain can also be used in real estate, where the properties can be titled and then titles can be clubbed together in a blockchain storage. Hence, the movement or change of ownership can happen easily without any misuse of property titles. All these titles are stored in the blockchain network, hence can be viewed by anybody but cannot be altered by anybody without agreement. Other important application is data sharing. Here, the data sharing can happen by using a blockchain. Hence, the unused data can be shared to the enterprises very easily. And the blockchain can also be used as a marketplace to store data, which can be used to improvise the business. Weapons tracking. As the federal government of USA is selling the weapons to the private as well as the other countries, the weapons can easily be traceable by using a blockchain. Hence, the federal government can trace the weapon, who is having the weapon right now, and what is the impact of the weapon. And the most important thing is copyright and royalty protection. Blockchain can be used for the material which is copyrighted or got a royalty protection. And this digital contents can be downloaded and can be used so that the artist or creator can claim their royalty or copyright issues in case of infringement act or royalty for that copyright material. So what is the opportunities in India? After post demonetization, India has developed or is concentrating on creating the digital currency and digitalization of financial market. And it creates a great awareness of blockchain offers, and the government is very potential to use blockchain in digital currency and digital market. The government has taken some initiatives as a proof of concept to demonstrate the financial commitment and transactions of banking and land registry and insurance. The Institute for Development and Research in Banking Technology, as this is another branch of, arm of RPI, lead two proof of concept to create or to credit and enhance the information for payments. That's in test now. The Infosys and IBM are identified for this purpose. However, the Andhra Pradesh is the first state to use blockchain technology to keep the records safe in land records. But however, they are not able to use blockchain technology fully, but they could achieve a part of storage as blockchain storage. However, the other states, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala, and Rajasthan, are following the Andhra Pradesh in this matter. When we talk about blockchain, cryptocurrency is unavoidable. As we know that cryptocurrency is a new form of digital currency or is a medium to exchange the money between parties across the globe. The decentralized nature of blockchain makes the cryptocurrency is so unique and nobody can forge or duplicate the cryptocurrency. The cryptocurrency is a medium of exchange, as I told you already. It becomes like an US dollar, Indian rupee, and so on. It's a digital currency and uses encryption techniques so that the creation of monetary units and to verify the transfer of funds can be controlled. But however, the cryptocurrency is not an intrinsic value, so that cannot be exchanged for other kind of commodity. Cryptocurrency is not in physical form, exists only in the network, so safe, and the network is completely decentralized for cryptocurrency, hence nobody can force the cryptocurrency. The top 5 cryptocurrencies are Bitcoin, which holds around $210 billion in 2018 business year. And the other follows like the Ethereum is $48.6 billion, Ether is $13.6 billion, XRP is $12.2 billion, and goes on. So the cryptocurrency is unavoidable in financial market as it holds major capitalization of financial business. So the 10 most frequently uses of cryptocurrencies. It's low cost money transfer. If you want to transfer the money of 5,000 rupees to Abu Dhabi, you have to pay 3,100 rupees as a commission, which holds almost 60% commission or as a brokerage charge. But the cryptocurrency can be used as low cost money transport without third party. As like as other money, cryptocurrency can also earn some kind of interest, and the cryptocurrency can, the price of cryptocurrency can be increased as like as other currencies or other investment. This technique is called as yield farming. So cryptocurrency can be used as an alternative store of wealth for the one who wants to store his wealth in different form, especially digital form. Cryptocurrency can also be used as an investment, and the cryptocurrency can be used as a contribution or donation to the startups, and can be used for a private transaction between two parties across the globe, and can be used as non-cash remittance between two parties, can be paid to the one who posted content and who deserved getting some money, and can be used across the world for travel, and even you can buy a Lamborghini car by using cryptocurrency. So let us move on to the next part, is called fintech, financial technology. As the name implies, it combination of finance and technology is a new industry or new technology which comprises of technologies, methodology, companies, and new services and etc. that plays a major role in different applications. Almost all the financial applications in the globe includes payment, insurance, and capital raising, investment, and market provisioning, etc. Let us see the real face of fintech. So before we see what is fintech and applications, let us know the impact or importance of fintech in the world. Let us look at the number here. The numbers are in billion, that is dollars. So the graph clearly says that there is a gradual improvement of fintech till 2015, and then it is going to be substantiated till 2020. Which means in the year 2015, after the Twin Tower attack in America, the people would like to, all the money transactions across the globe are monitored. And hence, the business people, includes the MNCs and terrorists, would like to make an alternate way of transacting the money, preferably digital. So they have started using the fintech technology. So from the year 2013 onwards, when we look at the diagram, that gradually increased till 2015. So this diagram explains the importance of fintech, and till 2017, we got 26 unicorns across the globe for financial technology. These 26 unicorns are doing a financial transaction across the globe and making beyond the transaction between two parties. So the fintech is so successful because of the infrastructure or key technologies. So if the fintech was introduced in 1990s, probably they would not succeed as like us today. But because of this key technology, it becomes so popular. The first technology is cloud computing. Cloud computing makes the financial technology organizations or financial organizations free from storage and computation, so that cloud computing makes the financial technology so adopted. And the artificial intelligence and machine learning helps the financial organization to adopt fintech as to identify the customers or the challenges in the financial transaction. Mobile computing increase the number of users who are going to increase the number of users of digital payment and digital transaction. So that's the other key feature for fintech. Data science and analytics makes the financial organization to identify the right customer for the right service, and the prediction of customers' behavior. Hence, that makes fintech to be succeed. And the API movement, the IoT, and cybersecurity, which makes a secure transaction between two parties in financial organization. So the secure HTTPS and then other security policy for transacting money from one person to other person. Obviously, the blockchain and cryptocurrency plays a role for financial technologies adoption. And augmented reality and virtual reality makes the user so simple and so comfortable in making digital transaction. An example is Alipay can transact money from your account by seeing a smile. All those, an example of AR and VR technology. So these key technologies are supporting the fintech, hence the fintech is so popular in the world. Other proof for financial technology is that the number of patents filed on fintech in the year 2015 on the technology categories and financial categories shows that the fintech becomes more not only popular and also so strong in getting growth. When we look at the patents count on technology categories, especially this data analytics, IoT, mobile platform security, cloud computing, cryptocurrency, over the financial applications or categories are payment, banking, wealth management, capital management, insurance, and lending. We got more than 25,000 patents in data analytics as of now in 2020. So these patents are proof that the fintech has got a good scope of getting growth. So let us move on to the categories of fintech. The financial technology is mainly categorized into payments, financial payments, transaction, and financial research in insurance, deposit and lending, banking services, investment management or wealth management and crowdfunding. These are the major categories of financial technology. We'll see one by one. Payment is mean for transaction of financial transaction of one party to other. That can be done by online or POS or mobile payment. PayPal is the very pioneer as well as the top ranked portal for online payments across the globe. And Square is the rank 1 payment gateway for POS payments as well as the Apple Pay for mobile payments. Now, as I said already, Alipay is the one who manages all-in-one of online POS and mobile payments. All these payments are using a financial transaction. And let us see how does the Apple Pay is work. As we know that Apple phone or iPhone can never share or save the card informations on their phone or on the Apple server, even in the encrypted form. But in case of others, the credit card number are stored in the encrypted form. Hence, whenever you want, that can be decrypted and use it. But in case of iPhone or Apple phone, the data are not stored in the device or in the server. Whenever the transaction is initiated, the token is created and the token is verified against of the bank account of the person, then it's approved. So we'll see in detail about tokenizations for transaction. The customer sent a request for a particular amount to the merchant. The merchant passes the token along to the merchant accurate. So merchant accurate takes the token and pass to the network. Once it moved to the network, then that becomes so secure as a bank wallet. Then that transaction taken into wallet, then wallet is directly connected to the bank and sends to the bank. The bank is verifying the wallet with the token, and it is approved. If it is valid, then it's approved the status, and it reverts back to the merchant that the status is approved or rejected. So at the end of this payment gateway, let us see the real impact of cashless payment. And it's really cashless payment when we are buying a merchant groceries on the road by using a smart card. We look at the left side top photo, the people buying a groceries by scanning their QR code in the market. And look at the bottom left, the beggar showing his barcode for getting money. So this is really happening in across the globe, and that makes all the categories include the financial service, public welfare, government, the gaming, online shopping, mobile top-up, credit card, or daily household services, medical services. Everything become cashless now. In the last 6 months, we are the evident, and we are seeing cashless transaction. And the next one is digital banking. As Bill Gates rightly said in the year 1994 that banking is necessary, but banks are not necessary. So we are experiencing this statement by last 6 months. We never went to the bank, but we are using banking. So we are using almost all the banking features much better than we go and we go to the bank physically. Includes money deposit, transfer, withdrawal, checking the balance and then account, and apply for financial products like buying a gold coin or buying and shopping and etc., and getting a loan and bill payment and other account service. Everything can happen digitally. Then the leading players in the digital market, I mean in the banking, are Citibank is a leader in digital banking, whereas the First International Bank is a leader in virtual banking. And when we look at the three-party platforms or vendors, Capital Banking Solutions hold the first rank. So all these players make the financial transaction is so comfortable for the users and who do not need to come out of his home for financial transaction. The investment is in the other category. As like as the transaction, the investment is also happened digitally. And there are many digital wealth management systems are available that makes your portfolio management solution so easy and comfortable to you. So the recent management portfolio solutions are very automatic and which build in self-learning algorithms. When we look at the evolution of these digital management systems, we got 4 versions. As 10 years back, 1.0, the share, if you are investing money in share market, then the expert will call you over the phone and tell you that this share is likely to be get increased today. You buy this, you sell this. Based on the telephonic advice, we do sell or buy the shares in the share market. In the revised version 2.0, there a dedicated fund manager is available for you. So the fund manager can sell or buy a share behalf of you. And you also can give your opinions to him. And in 3.0, there are specific algorithms were used for selling or buying the shares. As like as that, you can fix that I want this share for this price. Once the price comes, then automatically the money is debited from your account, share is purchased. Similarly, you also can sell the share to the market. For this rate of share can be sold out to the market. But in the recent version 4.0 or 4.0, that is fully automated, that does not require your involvement at all, and does not require your involvement at all. And in this category, self-learning algorithms are available. Hence, automatic asset shifts can happen easily. As self-learning algorithms are available that predict the trend of shares, accordingly that sells or buy the share according to the findings it found. Next interesting application is crowdfunding for financial technology. As the rightly said, don't never underestimate what one person will do. It's the best example for crowdfunding. As you know that crowdfunding is contributed by n number of people, by a crowd. A person is called creator can post his idea on the website is called as crowdfunding website or crowdfunding platform, on which the supporters can give money to him, can contribute money to the creator to start his business or to develop his idea. That can be categorized once the money is received. Once the expected money is received in the account is called as escrow account. Then the creator can take the money and start his business. Second version, once the money is not reached the expected amount of money, then the money can be or shall be given back to the supporters. So the crowdfunding can happen by 4 ways with so many platforms. K&Co, GoFundMe are the reward-based model. In case of reward-based model, the contributors are given a reward once the business is started, and the creator can give a reward to the contributors, to the supporters, as in terms of money or in terms of note or some agreement or document. So here the supporters or the contributors will get a reward. Sometimes they get an appreciation letter, not in terms of money. In second case, donation-based model, the supporters are donating the money to the creator for the particular reason. Hence, the supporters will not get any money as an interest or as a benefit to them because the money is donated to them. The equity-based model is the third category. There, the supporters contribute the money based on the return or agreed equity-based model. An example that I want 1% of total share of the company. I want 3%. So based on the money, the share can be shared with them. And the last one is lending-based model. There, the supporters or the contributors literally lending money to the creators. Hence, there is a return, clear statements. What is the interest for lending, and hence what is the benefit, and share can be shared. These are the 4 different models for crowdfunding. And the next one is, obviously we know that blockchain or cryptocurrency plays a major role in fintech. As blockchain is decentralized but digitalized, and it's highly secure because it's using a cryptographically sealed as distributed. Blockchain plays a major role in financial technology transaction. The other broader application of blockchain for fintech, I think the diagram is so simple. I think I skip the slide. The other application of fintech is insurance technology. The insurance now it becomes fully online. Earlier it was, I think 20 years back, you could not see any insurance online. And this insurance is using blockchain, machine learning, IoT, and big data for their business. Hence, the fintech can be used very well for insurance technology. So you can look at the people who is in the market for insurance in various categories: awareness and choice, purchase, use, IoT, B2B. So let us move on to the next one. The modern fintech. And the term fintech was coined by 1915 by creating a credit card by Diners Club. After some time, in 1965, the first ATM was hosted by Barclays in London. And in 1970s, the electronic trading or electronic transaction has been introduced. In 1980s, E-Trade launches for first online brokerage services. In 1981, online telebanking is introduced in Britain. In 1991, Stanford Federal Credit Union introduced the first online banking website in the US. In 1999, PayPal was introduced. In 2009, the Bitcoin, first cryptocurrency, is introduced or created. In 2010, Google Pay was launched. In 2011, FinTech app was launched for widespread popularity. In 2014, Alibaba came into the market. After that, the FinTech got the revolutionary changes. In 2019, digital-only banks are available. Only digital banks are available. No more physical banks. Was introduced by N26. N26 is a digital-only bank. There are no records, no physical bank. Only digital services are available. In 2020, we got Corona, COVID-19. So we are forced to use only digital, no physical communication. That is also a great change in fintech. And when we look at the application of blockchain in fintech, blockchain is used in fintech as KYC verification of the customer or the client, and supports supply chain financing and management to verify or to identify the items, and also supports simplification of remittance process. Earlier, the process was so complex. Now, by using a blockchain, you can make remittance so simple. And the blockchain mechanism is so trusted for payment, and blockchain can record storage and management so secure and safe. Blockchain is obviously disturbing the digital insurance. Hence, the digital insurance got a new shape now. And blockchain is eliminating the dark tactics of stock market. So earlier, there are some tactics off the screen of stock market. By using a blockchain, we can eliminate that. And blockchain can be used in fintech as a faster processing speed for transaction. And blockchain can eliminate audit trails in fintech. We do not need audit because it's called reconciliations instantly. However, the fintech got its own challenges in industry. One is more dependency. Fintech required more dependencies so that to increase the complexity and avoid of forgery. And no trustability and slower process and higher operational cost. So blockchain can be used to increase the dependency as it is distributed in nature. As it is distributed in nature, it has more trustability. Nobody can immute it. And blockchain is quite faster when we use it for transaction, straight one-to-one transaction. And it's higher operational cost, obviously, but the recent developments of blockchain can decrease the cost of operation. So the new revamping fintech industry are banking and B2B payments, trading and trade finance, loans and credits, regulatory compliance and audits. All this industry can look for blockchain for more growth. And the companies who adopted blockchain in fintech is VTrade, Circle, Robinhood. These are the companies or the pioneers to use blockchain applications for their financial transaction. And the other cryptocurrencies and platform for best financial service are Ethereum is also used for cryptocurrency, and Hyperledger, Ripple are the best platform to use blockchain in a financial service industry. For 2 more minutes. When we look at the fintech, there are main 8 user cases can be quoted. The first one is significantly reduce the risk and prevent the fraud as it is distributed. The best examples in the market is Everledger and IBM blockchain. And the next one is digital identification using blockchain. The bank chain and secure key are the best example. And smart contract for automatic contract enforcement. Ethereum and NUO, now these are the 2 people who's doing smart contract across the globe during this pandemic. And simplifying the bank transaction across the border, RippleNet and MasterCard are the people who use blockchain. New type of trading platform and simplifying payments, P2P transfer, Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum, and etc. All new cryptocurrency can be used to simplify the payments, especially digitally without brokerage. And the rise of smart assets, as I said earlier, blockchain can be used to manage the assets. Hyperledger, an example. Loyalty and reward points are the different use cases for blockchain in financial technology. As I said earlier, there are many challenges in implementing the blockchain in fintech. Though we are talking too much about blockchain, the complete structure of blockchain with the standards and norms are yet to be developed. Hence, it takes another 2 or 5 years to be standardized the blockchain applications. And the blockchain technology is in the current forms is not ready to use as such. We require a lot of research as well as API to integrate the blockchain to the existing application. And as we know that the blockchain and cryptocurrency has no control to monitor or control them. Hence, we required another set of resources to control the cryptocurrency so that we can use it for all the financial terms and transaction. And as like as other emerging areas, the blockchain also got shortage of resource persons. Hence, a shortage of training and resource persons. We require a lot of training and resource persons to develop such modules or usage. And the last one is the public perceptions, and the not only public perceptions, even the governments, they look for cryptocurrency is in the negative way. So that is to be changed for adopting the cryptocurrency in financial transaction. So with that, I am summarizing the uh, fintech in blockchain role in fintech. So you have any queries, you can ask me now. I think I have completed by right time. Yeah, I'm happy to take one or two queries before the next session starts beginning. Or you can send me the queries in offline as well. If you got any queries, you can mail to the coordinator. Probably I'll take it the queries through mail, and then I'll happy to answer you in the next sessions or sometimes later in the HTTP.
Participants, you can post your questions in the chat box, or you can unmute and ask the speaker directly. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your wonderful lecture. Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you, madam. If there is any queries in a mail, please do forward to me.
Yes,
I'll
sir.
be happy to take forward and let you know the experience what I have. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I thank you very much. Probably I can leave now, I guess.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And we have the other session followed by you. We'll take over that session, sir. Thank you. Minu ma'am, we can start the next session.
Yeah. Ma'am has come here. Dhanalakshmi ma'am, you're able to see the screen?
Not yet, ma'am. Not yet. Yes, it was visible now.
Okay, ma'am. Yes, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. We are in session number 6.2. The topic is Universal Human Values and Ethics. The guest speaker is Dr. R. Amrita, Associate Professor, Department of Physics, KCG College of Technology. Ma'am is PhD from University of Madras in 2008. Ma'am is having 18 years of teaching experience and has published papers more than 20 national and international journals. Ma'am has received many awards. To name few, outstanding researcher and educator from National Federation of Entrepreneurship and Development, distinguished researcher from Venus International, listed in Manquis Who is Who. Dr. Amrita, the session is yours. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am. Ma'am, Dr. Amrita. Dhanalakshmi, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, she's here only. You stop sharing. She will, I think she can start her session.
Yeah, sorry. You can hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Initially, I was not able to unmute myself. That is the problem. I was trying to call you. Sorry. That is the problem.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, session is yours.
Yeah.
Kindly continue.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction, Ms. Minu. I'll straight away go into my session. Actually, this session is aimed at enabling the participants with whatever is universal human values and ethics. And this MHRD has been telling about this universal human values for quite a couple of years, though it started way back, and we've been trained in this. And the main issue is to get it across to the first years and, if possible, even to the higher semester students about the universal human values and what they really have to know before venturing into the world. I shall now go into my session, and I shall make it as short as possible, right? And we have been undergoing actually training in this universal human values for the past couple of years. In the sense, I have attended a 10-day workshop. I don't know if some of you would have also attended. I have attended a 10-day workshop already, and I also served as a facilitator in one of the 7-day workshops. And apart from this, I have also translated the entire universal human values content into Tamil. The entire PPTs, all the PPTs I have translated into Tamil. So let me now go into it. It's trying to present actually. Yeah. You're able to view the screen? Dr. Dhanalakshmi, you're able
Yes,
to?
ma'am. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
okay. So this was started by MHRD long back because of the state of the society as stated by them. And what is the state? We have a lot of fear around this. This I'm not, though it is listed, I think you're all aware, due to natural calamities, wild animals, and inhuman behavior of human being. And we all know this is increasing. Certainly, this has not been decreasing. And the present pandemic is only added to this high level of chaos. So there's an increasing tension, and students, they develop a mindset where they think what they think is only right. They are not able to take whatever, let me say, I think they hate advice as we do, and they really do not know the direction which they are venturing into. And the right time for them to know all these values is when they step into the college. You could also address the third years or fourth year, but when they step into the college, this is an ideal time for them to pick up these values. And the definition of success around us is, is very nebulous. It's not very clear. Is it getting a money? Is it getting a degree? Is it getting a job? What is success? Each person, we define success in a different way. So what has to be got across is success is no regret of the past, no conflict in present, and no anxiety about future. I think we dwell in all three as of now. Maybe conflict in present, maybe a little lesser, but we do have a lot of regret of the past and quite a lot of anxiety about the future. So should education prepare one to be successful? So we as teachers, we would probably tell ourselves that it's only academics we are going to be bothered about, nothing else. But then should education prepare one to be successful? Should we be imparting these values to the students is the question. So what are the expectations? Education has the response. What is the responsibility of the education? It is understanding what to do and learning how to do. We are giving students the knowledge as learning how to do. What to do, I'm not speaking in the way of technical aspect. That I think most of us are doing more than sufficient. But what to do in the sense of responsibility the student has to get are both required, or we can do with just one of them. We know we can't do with just one of them. So both are important. And what should be the priority? The priority is understanding what to do and learning how to do. These are things the students should know when they go in. So the current priority we all know is learning how to do. So knowing or unknowingly, our education has become more academic oriented, and there is almost no input on values. We are currently focused on providing knowledge to do things, preparing them for the profession, but are we preparing them for the person they are going to be in future? This is one thing many of the students might fail, or some of the students learn it the hard way and then survive. So there's a lack of mutual feelings in relationship among human beings and lack of mutual enrichment. Let's not think too much on this word of mutual enrichment. So deciding what to do or what is valuable without clarity in the first question, which is what to do, learning how to do is not going to be as effective. So because we are not sure where we are heading into. So our choices are actually at every stage of life, we have only one choice: complete school with good marks, get admission to a good college, get a degree, and get a job. And then get money, get more money, get a house, on and on and on. So there is no end to get. But ultimately, what do these all lead to? What do these all, why do we do all this? So we need only happiness. So what is the role of education in defining all this? So the role of education is giving everybody a definite human conduct. This is one thing these facilitators get across often, a definite human conduct. So if you take trees, plants, etc., their conduct is based on their seed. Animals, their conduct is based on their breed. Human beings, their conduct, well, it's actually not based on their education. Our conduct differs from person to person. So when an animal has a lack of physical facility, when I say physical facility, it is only the basic facilities. In Tamil, we say unna udai, irukka idam, unna unavu, irukka idam, udukka udai. The basic facilities, they are known as the physical facilities. So once an animal gets all this, it is satisfied. But what about us? Our physical facilities, once they are satisfied, when you speak about a house, it has to be a better house. When you speak about clothing, probably it has to be designer clothing. And when we speak about food, it has to be probably pizza and other things. It's not us I'm speaking about. I'm just speaking about how we are going to take it to the students. So once a human being gets a physical facility, he forgets about it and starts thinking about other things. I think we all know. We know the value of something only when we don't have it. A few years back, when we didn't have power due to Varda cyclone for 3 or 4 days, or when we didn't have power during the flooding, we felt how inevitable was having a power supply. Once we have a power supply, we forget about it and we start misusing it. So what was happiness? So in the case of animals, as I keep telling, they get satisfied with whatever they get once they are satisfied, and we never get satisfied. So how is it going to affect the students? This is not a moral science class for the staff members. If I'm sounding like that, I'm really sorry. It's how we are going to get it across to its students. Suppose we make a list of our thoughts and we were asked to make a list of things we want. When we went for the session, all of us were asked to make a list of things we want. So one person said he wants to own a Mercedes Benz. Another person said he wants to own a farmhouse. There was another person who said he wants to go around the world. We were around 100 people in that room. And once we started making a list of things we want to do, each of us were asked to state 2 or 3 things we want to do. And once we started making a list of things we want to do, it was actually not more than 50. A person wants a big house, another person wants a beautiful house. So it was actually an overlap. So there were not more than 50, but we all think our needs are being endless. Once we get probably a good Android phone, we'll probably then start aiming for an iPhone. So all these have to percolate down to our students, and tell them where their need starts and need ends, yes, they are not going to listen. Suppose you're going to tell them, be satisfied with a Nokia 1100, they are going to think we are all mental. You can't tell them all that. Only thing is, we start giving them some basic values and make them think on their own what is necessary and what is unnecessary. And once they get the human values, they realize the human values themselves, I think they will start realizing all this. I will go into some real-time examples instead of being on this for very long. So we all want to live in harmony. Do we want to live in opposition? Of course not. And this 6 months have taught us that we don't want to struggle for a survival. Survival of the fittest has been there for quite some time, and each of us, we don't we have taken our existence for granted. There are so many things we have taken for granted. These 6 months have taught us so much that even when we go out, how much we have to be careful and how much we have to consider about others. And when we are asked to wear masks, is just not our own safety but the safety of others as well. So it is going to be mutual understanding. So how is it again going back to the students? Right? Let me not dwell much on this. The role of education is to facilitate the development of the competence to live with definite human conduct in all human beings. Is there a need for such an education? And who is responsible to make it available? Of course, we are responsible. So we could probably tell this sort of education has been given to the students from the school onwards. They've been having moral science classes. So how is it going to be different for us? What is our role in this? And what are we to ensure when we speak to the students? Or the biggest question is it really our job? I think most of us will agree that when we start addressing the student, not always we get a total cooperation from them. There are so many instances that the student wants to stand against us, or in the worst case, because of a respect he has for us, he may nod his head when he speaks to us. When he goes back, he doesn't follow whatever we have been telling. Because as we all know, advice is the easiest to give and very difficult to take. So if you want to provide such education, what should be the basic requirements? So there were a lot of discussions on this. And the question asked was, how do we judge ourselves and how do we judge others? So obviously, the answer all of us gave was, of course, we consider others like us. We don't make much of a difference. If it's right for me, it's right for the others. If it's wrong for me, it's wrong for the others. So that's the answer we all gave. Then there was a question asked, how are we judging ourselves? How are we judging others? So we judge ourselves based on our intention. We judge others based on competence. So just to give an example, there is a glass which drops and breaks. If I have dropped the glass, I always say the glass slipped from my hand. I transfer the responsibility to the glass. The glass slipped from my hand. When my friend drops the glass, I'm sure to ask her, why did you drop the glass? Can't you see what you're doing? It is not that she really wanted to drop the glass. So when it is pertaining to you, we always shift the blame and we state our intention that your intention was not to drop the glass. When you're speaking about others, it's not you're never speaking about the intention, but then it's the competence. Can't you even hold a glass properly? The same thing occurs in every field. Suppose something you present goes wrong, you always say probably there was some network problem, or I don't know how this happened. Uh, you again try to shift the blame, and if the mistake is with somebody, you always say, can't you check what you have been doing? And when you use the word can't you check what you have been doing, immediately the other person is going to revolt. The other person is going to stand against you, telling, can't you understand what I'm doing? I think most of us as parents have faced this with our children. When you ask your child, can't you see what you were doing? Immediately the child revolts. Now, I think many of us would have had plenty of experience with our students as how we have addressed them and how well they have come around. So we all want to be happy. We all want to be prosperous. and we want this happiness and prosperity to continue. But then when we ask ourselves, are we really happy? Are we really prosperous? Now, this word prosperous. Suppose I ask a person, are you prosperous? The person may say no. The person I'm speaking about may have 3 or 4 cars, may have a beautiful house, but he will not call himself prosperous because he wants probably a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, or he wants a larger house which is around 10,000 square feet big. So prosperity is again going to be only a relative word. Are we understanding this? And what they get across again and again to us is goal. When you use the word goal, our goal should always be being happy. Our goal is always one, being happy. Everything else are only steps which are taking it towards the goal. So you will probably say, my goal is to get a good job. Yeah, you get a good job. You get a lousy boss. The working hours are long. The job is wonderful. The pay is wonderful. But then you're not happy with the boss. You're not happy with the working hours. So you have the job you want, but then you're not happy. Then what is your goal? My goal is to finish engineering at the top. You have finished engineering at the top. You don't get a good job. So then where is happiness? So the ultimate goal for all of us, I think we'll all agree, is we should always be happy. So whatever we are seeing on the way are only steps. So these are only for our understanding, not to speak to you, our students. I'm sure the students will walk off when we speak all this. So there are 4 dimensions of an individual: our thought, behavior, our work, and understanding. So all should be in sync if we want to give our best. And when we have all these dimensions within ourselves, what we do is, as an individual, how we are functioning, and as a family, are we giving respect to the values? How are we transforming these values to the society? And how is it to the nature? So when we raise this question, when the question about nature was raised, there was a lot of participation from the participants. Maybe some of you have attended these sessions also. There was a lot of talk about say no to plastic, and there's a lot of greenery that is being destroyed. We all are very much aware of say no to plastic. We need a lot of greenery, conserve water, etc., etc., etc. And what has been our role in all that? We have been posting, sharing on Facebook. We have been sharing on uh, Instagram. We have been probably sending forwards in WhatsApp. What else has been our role? If this is going to be our role, what will be the role of students? 2015 was a classic example which brought back the faith we have in the youth, because during the 2015 flood, we could see a lot of young people jumped into the fray and they helped us a lot. If these people can be responsible at a given time, these people can certainly be responsible for themselves, at least on a longer run. Once they are responsible for themselves, they are going to care for the family, the society, and ultimately everything else. So we have had moral science. I don't know if many schools are still having this moral science, but we have had moral science in school, where we are told a list of do's and don'ts, and there is a conditioning of our mind, and they tell us this is what you have to do, this is right, this is wrong. Yes, moral science at that age is absolutely fine, because at that age the children's mind is very susceptible and they can be easily conditioned. I remember one of our teachers, she told us, when we fall down, we've been told by elders, oh, you fell down, now let us hit this ground, it only made you fall. That is the first seed when the kid feels he or she has to give it back to whoever is bad to them. So we were told, never ever think like that. It is you who fell down. Was not the ground which made you fall. Have that. And most of us still carry that feeling, probably because it was told to us at a very young age. And teachers used to, I was in a Catholic convent, and the teachers used to tell us what is to be done, what was not to be done, and we could take in easily. One thing was our age was that, and another thing was we were in an age in where we could easily take things, not revolting like present day youth. So now for value education, The main thing we'll have to do when we speak to students is we never tell them what is to be done, what is not to be done. They can verify, you can actually put it before them and ask them what is right and what is wrong. They should be able to verify that for themselves, and it should be a natural acceptance. It should not be a case where you tell them, look, this is only right, this is wrong. They are never going to take it. So you are going to create a basic understanding on them, and you're going to make them understand on their own and do it on their own. You will be surprised to know we explored this last year in our college, and the results we got were actually wonderful. We thought the students are not going to cooperate. Maybe some of you would have also done it in your college. I'm not very sure because this training has been going on for a couple of years. So we are actually making, we cannot call, we are making a holistic transformation in the students' human consciousness, but we can probably start giving them human values and a definite human conduct as to how to understand and how to go from there. And when you speak to some of the parents, what do they tell us? My son wants a recent mobile without which he is not cooperating. There are so many parents who come and tell us, not in this period, even earlier, there were so many parents who used to come and tell us, my daughter says having a smartphone is a must. My daughter says she can study only with a smartphone. She needs a smartphone plus a laptop. We all know they don't need both. They don't need both. They should be happy with the notes or whatever we teach in the class. But they tell us this is a must. And we have also seen students who make demands that they really want a bike if they have to come to if they have to come to college. And parents, they come and complain, I take a large loan to get them a bike. And parents, which we are also a part of that group, we take pride in telling, I may suffer, but I want my kid to get the best. So aren't we being unfair to the kid even there? We are not telling them what we are going through, and they never learn things the hard way. Our kid should know what it is to take a no, whether it is going to be our kid or it's going to be a student. Our students are presently are not trained to take a no. They immediately revolt, and immediately the parents tell he is refusing to study. She is refusing to come out of the room. So we cannot tell them this is right, this is wrong. Obviously, we cannot tell them this is right, this is wrong. So if you look at the education today, what has been missing? The right understanding of every self has been missing, and the capacity to live in a relationship with other human beings is also missing. Our students are very happy, or even we are very happy with Netflix, presently Netflix, Prime, or WhatsApp and Instagram. So any communication beyond that is becoming actually very rare. So what is our responsibility to make a transformation to the students? Obviously, we cannot bring a transformation where they stop watching Netflix and whatever, and they stop using WhatsApp and come out of Facebook. That is really not going to be possible. So what is the kind of transformation we have been looking at? I'll just take the example of what we did in KCG last year. So last year, we had this universal human values. We had several sessions where we spoke to the students. A couple of us have been trained in this. Then we spoke to the others and told them what to do. And we have a list here: universal, rational, possible, natural. No, we didn't tell them all this. We did not tell them also. This is just inputs from MHRD for our own understanding what to do. If he gives such a lecture to the students, obviously he's going to nod off, as some of you would already be nodding off now. So when we had the student induction program for the first years, actually it was spread over few days, and it had various modules such as yoga. We had some fitness sessions. We didn't have any academic sessions during those days. We had some fitness sessions. We had some industrial visits. Then we had some communication development sessions. And most of the days we had, most of the sessions were concentrated on universal human values. So each of us, we chose various discussion topics. We chose topics such as trust, gratitude, competition, and cooperation. And actually, we thought the feedback will not be much. So what we took care was, we didn't speak much. We just started off, asked the students a few questions and asked them to speak. We just asked them to speak, and we were so surprised at how far they all opened up. So, for example, when I took up the topic of gratitude in a class of around 40, I had a class of around 40 and I started the session at around 2 o'clock. So, I opened this topic about gratitude and gave them a couple of examples and asked them. So, when I say gratitude, whom do you think of and what would you like to get across? So, I started the session at 2 and I expected to finish by around 3:15, expecting each of them telling one word or telling, I am grateful to so and so, and sitting down. Believe me, I had to close the session forcibly at 4:30. I started at 2. I had to forcibly close the session. Each student came forward and spoke so much about their parents, their teacher, their grandmother, and why they were thankful. Each student was very emotional. They were not ashamed about opening up before their classmates. They were all unknown to each other, and we were also unknown to them. They did not feel ashamed about opening up about themselves and what they really felt, how they would like to go on, and why they are all in this college, because of whom. And that really opened up gates for us. And when we spoke about trust, how much they spoke about their parents, how much they spoke about their friends. And some of them told us, when we speak like this, we realize what we have come through. I know I should be really thankful to my parents for bringing me so far, or I know I should be thankful to there were people talking about their grandparents also. I am not telling we should take across this thankfulness to ourselves or to the teachers or the parents or their sister or brother. But once they started exploring themselves like that, I saw a definite change in their behavior as the sessions went on. Yeah, maybe in 40, not all 40 may respond to you, but I could see a very definite behavior, definite conduct as this universal human value session is trying to get across in them. Most of them are trying hard. And recent Teachers' Day, I got message from one of the girls telling that she has been a very shy person, refusing to participate in anything. And last year, she actually participated in many competitions in our college, including debating, where she did very well. She didn't win a prize, but she did quite well and got a lot of appreciation from the judges. So I thought she has been a seasoned debater, and she messaged me she has never gone up on stage. But once we had asked her to explore herself, she was able to determine that she can do something, or at least she can try something, and that is how she started excelling. We have had students who wanted to quit, who really wanted to quit. They were hospitalized. They wanted to quit. There was a person who wanted to do agriculture, but she couldn't get into agriculture. She wanted to quit. Then we spoke. We didn't advise them. We really didn't advise them. We stood by them and we spoke about these values. All these students I'm speaking about are people who have cleared all their subjects. No, not in the second semester alone, where everybody is given a pass. They have cleared all the subjects in the first semester also, and they are doing quite well. I'll not tell they are scoring 90s and all O grade, but they have been doing quite well. So apart from these discussions, we also had certain activities where we emphasized competition and cooperation. So the photographs you see, these two people who are standing alone, they are speaking about gratitude. You can see that they are enjoying. This guy was walking around and speaking a lot. And we gave them sessions where they had to do some few plays, role plays, and get across values. And all these people were actually unknown to each other. They got together, and within a short time, they were able to make role plays. And most of them ended up being very thick friends very early on. They got, and they started adjusting themselves. And all these, they said later on, they said the initial sessions where you were, they didn't use the word human values. Of course, we didn't tell them also. We just gave it a name. For people who know Tamil, we just gave it a name, Vanga Paragalam. These sessions, we call them as Vanga Paragalam, and we told them, we are also your friends, you can speak whatever you want. And later on, they said these sessions were very helpful because they were able to realize where they stand. we didn't have many of these people speaking back to us. No, not a single person has spoken back to us. We didn't have any of these speaking back to us, at least most of the classes we handle. And we also had a situation where they were trying better than they had tried earlier. And I think we all agree with the present day students, the problem is not that their IQ is low. In fact, their IQ is extremely high. The problem is that their EQ is low. Their emotional quotient is quite low. So we should give them a chance to discover the emotional quotient, what they have. They do have this, only thing they'll have to discover the amount of emotional quotient they possess and how to bring forth their talent. So if we just give them a small push in the right direction by discussing about values initially, I'm sure there's a lot of improvement in them. And there was a small game I organized for them. I divided them into two teams, and there were a lot of sessions. The right hand side photograph, what you see, I had divided them into two teams, and I told them to create obstacles, and the other team had to tie up their hand and get through these obstacles. So this is one of the obstacles you see, and there's a small bar across, and the person had to bend and come. This person's eyes will be tied. The other persons were directing him as to how to go and reach the final destination. The route was actually very difficult. The second team had only done this, but you should have seen the amount of cooperation among the students in helping their classmate get across all these obstacles and reach their destination. There was a lot of fun factor to it. Plus, there was a lot of competition and cooperation also when they did this. And both the teams, they were only standing on the side and they were laughing all the while. And by the end of the sessions, when we took feedback, the feedback was excellent. And we also felt that sessions like yoga, the students will not be interested. They will say, I am not willing to do yoga and all that. Actually, we ended up in a situation where the students requested if they could wear tracks in yoga. And the feedback about the yoga sessions was overwhelming. And these sessions, most of them said they sort of belong to the institution before the classes started. That is one problem most of the students feel. They don't have a sense of belonging with the institution for a long time. And these sessions, they said, help them gain the sense of belonging. And as against many of the batches we have seen in the recent times, this batch, there was a lot of belonging they exhibited. There's a lot of cooperation we got from these batches. And I will not say like in the movies we had a miracle and all that, but we saw a lot of change wherein the students wanted to perform. Yes, some of them were not very good academically and all that, but the students really wanted to perform. So only with these intentions, this human values course development is started way back in 1995. Maybe in some of the institutions, not in many of the institutions. It was helping students discriminate between valuable and superficial in life. They will not accept, obviously, we all know when we tell them what is valuable and what is superficial, and to develop sensitivity and awareness leading to commitment, courage to act on their own understanding. This we were able to achieve last year. There was a awareness and there was a lot of commitment, and courage was definitely there. Most of them were willing to come forward and participate in everything. And I'm not sure if they really started reflecting on their life goals, but probably with sessions later on, because they are so young, they forget easily. With sessions coming later on, they will be probably in a position to reflect on their life goals. And these sessions started actually way back in 2005 in Triple IT Hyderabad as an experiment. And then it percolated to the IITs, most of the IITs. And as you can see, many of the universities have started doing it. And then MHRD decided that should speak to AICT and should be a part of the first year induction program. In fact, they're also planning to make it a mandatory course, but I think it will be a non-credit course, but it will have hours allotted to it right in the first semester. And a great person like Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam advocated that we should have this human value course somewhere here, somewhere when they are entering into the college. So I would probably like to get across that maybe the first few slides were sounding like I'm giving you advice. No, I'm not trying to give you advice. I was just reflecting on what we are being through. Uh, what what is our thought process? So what really I want to get across is only two things. One thing is our definition of happiness. Our goal should be single, that it should always be happiness. We tell it to get it across to the students, and also make them realize that what they really want is not a mobile phone or a laptop or Netflix connection or a bike, but what they really want is to be successful. When you make them realize this on their own, I am sure they are going to give their best. We have seen many students giving their best. Sorry if I've been sounding preachy, but this is the way this entire human values thing goes, unless it is going to be in person. So when it's going to be virtual, it might have sounded a little preachy, but let us speak to the students, let us make them speak, and I'm sure we are going to get the best out of them. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It was a wonderful session. Happy to know about the human values and the students. And the participants, if you have any discussions, you can have with madam. You can unmute and speak, or you can type it in the chat window.
Good evening, madam.
Yes, sir.
So, now part of this, and I attended the course in Lucknow
Yes,
almost
sir.
years back.
Yes, sir.
So probably like the sessions they were going in some other direction, and later they have just freeze to some content, and they dealt it well at
Yes,
the
sir.
end. So I just wanted to ask, maybe can you just share like a schedule what exactly you'll follow in your college?
Sir, what we did was the schedule is suppose it's going to be for how many days we'll have to decide. So we cannot have only these sessions alone because the students will get restless. So we were having every day we were having sessions like these. We were having department orientation. Then we were having yoga sessions. Daily we had yoga sessions. And then we arranged a couple of industry visits. And apart from this, we had this learning skills, communication skills development also. But every day at least one or two sessions we had this human value session. So what we started was we just asked them to introduce that we do, and then we took in what we had was we shared some stories. When I say stories, not stories, some personal experiences. Suppose we ourselves have undergone, that's what they insist, we ourselves have undergone some difficult patch and how we have overcome. We can tell it to the students, or it can be our friend who has undergone a difficult patch and overcome that, and that one story is sufficient to trigger them off, sir. That
Okay.
one story triggers them off and they talk a lot.
Fine. And one more thing I wanted to ask, like maybe this time, like we have to establish a human value cell, universal human value cell at our
Yes, yes,
institutes,
yes, sir.
and along with that, the this MHRD is recommending to teach a 3 credit course in the institute.
What
So
course, sir?
probably framing a 3 credit course in this as a human value,
Oh, now it's 3 credit.
three
Okay, yeah,
credit
yeah, yeah,
course.
yeah.
So that we
That
have to teach it for.
yes,
It is for
yes,
the third semester. We have to include that.
yes, sir.
Third
So
semester.
you can't
It
teach,
is
sir.
not for the first semester.
You can't teach.
Yeah, yeah, because like this, the real experience sharing different is different, and according to the curriculum, framing
Yes,
the syllabus and putting the exam is it is little bit difficult to, especially
yes,
with respect to this subject. So
yes, sir.
this is
You can ask them for
this is where we are struggling.
stories. You can ask them for real time experiences of anybody they know of. You can probably tell them tomorrow's topic is going to be let's say courage. You can bring in stories of anybody you know of. It can be yourself also, or anybody. They'll
No, it is
probably think,
exam we have to conduct at the end. 3 credit course means exam we have to conduct. So for that,
I,
some
I,
fixed syllabus is
I
required.
don't think so, sir. I don't
That's what
think
is my question.
No, I don't think there is going to be an
it is
exam.
a
No,
cir-
no. I don't think there's going to be an
it is
exam.
a circular from MHRD.
Yes, sir. But I personally don't think it's going to be an exam. I will get in touch with this UHV cell and get back probably and tell you. I don't think there is an exam.
Okay,
It is
okay,
only,
okay.
and in fact, we were told it's going to be a non-credit. This 3 credit itself is surprising. I think they just have to complete it, not take an exam. If I'm right, I'll get back, sir.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions, participants?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Though ma'am is our own faculty, on behalf of Department of Computer Science and Engineering, I would like to extend our sincere thanks to Dr. Amrita for giving an excellent coverage on the topic Universal Human Values and Ethics. Thank you so much, and looking forward to attend many of your future sessions, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am Amrita.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.